Welcome to another Dragonlance Saga review episode. It is Lenara's Remember the 7th. My name is Adam, and today I'm going to give you my review of Spirit of the Wind by Pierson. I would like to take a moment and thank the GL Saga members and invite you to consider becoming a member by visiting the link in the description below. You can even pick up Dragonlance gaming materials using my affiliate links. Now, this is my perspective only. If yours differs, that's okay. Share it in live chat or in the comments below if you're watching this video after the fact. These reviews are not pre-written as of late because I've been doing the audiobooks as I commute to and from work. So I'm able to read basically like a book a book a week doing that. And I just sort of riff on the thoughts of the book and the characters and situations and stuff. This is the first of the Bridges of Time series, which gives us a really wonderful transition from the 4th age to the 5th age of Krynn. In this particular case, we're getting a glimpse at Malystryx for, some of the characters for the first time and what she's going to be doing. They seed in information about dragon totems and bring in old heroes of the Lance, which is just so much fun for me as a fan of this series. And I've got to say, just as a sort of, before I start talking in depth about the story itself, this is such a good novel. And Pierson is such a good author. Everything that he has ever written for Dragonlance has been gold. This guy is awesome. And I hope that if we ever come back to a time where Dragonlance novels are being written again, I really hope he starts it. And I know we have Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman sort of finishing up their new trilogy about Magius and Huma. But I got to be honest, I am less excited about that than I was reading this. This is such a good book. Like, I'm not even lying. Really, really good stuff. All right. So Chris, how you doing? Book's a hidden gem. Corey, sorry you're late. No problem, man. Thanks for tuning in live. This book somehow made you love Kendermore. No one would help them avoid extinction but Riverwind. All right. So let's sort of set this up because the way that this is presented is a little bit odd. It shows fishermen, and then a dragon comes in and it's Malystryx and they get destroyed. And then the dragons around the area start talking about how this big red dragon is sort of killing other dragons, but it's not just killing them. It's like disfiguring them and taking their heads, which is a strange thing to be talking about in general. But these are dragons after the War of the Lance and the Blue Ladies' War. And they're like, what the hell is going on? Who are these other dragons and why are they hunting each of us? You think you have this sort of unspoken agreement. There might be territorial feuds or something, but this is before the Dragon Purge was ever a known entity. And it's just Malystryx feeding and building her dragon totem. I don't even remember how she knew how to do that in the first place. If it's something that she just brought with her, they just sort of made up in the story or what. But it is really cool seeing all of these notes that's clearly set before dawn of a new age, but right after the Chaos War, also, and it's really, really nice getting this fresh look at the 5th age rather than in most of the stories, and certainly in the game products, it's set like 40 years after the Summer of Chaos, and so the Dragon Purge has already ended at that point, and you have your Dragon Overlords and lesser Dragon Overlords set up in place. This is before all that. When I had read War of Souls and Goldmoon was talking about how her husband died, I didn't feel any emotional resonance because Riverwind was never set up as a character to care about. We had Riverwind the Plainsman as a novel, which was the closest we could get to caring about this character. But even then, the way that he's been written and presented, sort of standoffish. He's hyper focused and obsessed about Goldmoon, and that's kind of it. Like, there's nothing really to him. This novel does what I wish every novel would have done about the deaths of the heroes of the Lance, and gave them a due out. Like, it gave them a deserved ending to their story. We pick up initially with Riverwind as Sturm is entering into the Inn of the Last Home and Dragons of On Twilight for the first time. And he, as a character, never changed until this novel. And it's not a drastic, uncharacteristic change. It's just he's older. He's dealing with a lot of shit. and he sees this new threat. So as soon as it cuts away from the dragons and Malystryx, and ultimately one of the dragons goes and says, "Hey, I'll be your mate." And Malystryx is like, "Okay, you can be my mate. You look cool." I'm paraphrasing. Then we sort of cut back to the kender, Kronn-alin Thistleknot, and his sister Catt, basically sailing around Ansalon, and they come to the end of the last home about the same time that Riverwind is there to talk to the old heroes of the Lance. They close down the end of the last home to sort of have a moment with Riverwind, just an evening of sharing memories, and they're old friends. I mean, what a lot of people don't realize is after we stopped catching up with Goldmoon and Riverwind in Dragons of Autumn Twilight, I'm sorry, in Dragons of were they in Spring Dawning? I can't remember if they were actually in Spring Dawning or not. But anyway, as soon as we stopped from the Chronicles, Goldmoon and Riverwind went back to the plains of Abasasinia and reunited all of the tribes of the Plainsmen. And that was a very long struggle. I don't know if it's ever been actually written about or not, but I think it might be interesting. There is a game product where you can sort of play an adventure in that same time period. I don't know if they're actually unifying the group or not, but it's just basically, it's like an anthology series that's set in this time period when they're sort of reunifying all the Plainsman tribes and stuff. But basically, they become like king and queen of this area, of the Plainsmen's tribes. And they sort of rule justly. They have their own kids. And so ultimately, Riverwind is coming with his one of his daughters. I think he actually came with a son and a daughter initially. I'm working off of memory. And it's not really important because ultimately it's Brightdawn, his daughter, that goes with him on this adventure. But they go to the end of the last home. They have this really great meeting, and it's nice nostalgia bait for those of us who love the heroes of the Lance. And then we get Kronn entering the picture, and he's like, "Hey, I got a story to tell about Kendermore, and I need someone to help me." And while Riverwind was there, he gave Caramon a note and said, "Give this to Goldmoon upon my death. I'm really, really ill, and I want her to have this." And before Goldmoon sends Riverwind off, she gives him what I interpret it as a holy symbol, but it's really just a necklace with the Tears of Mishakal on it, the infinity symbol, basically. And so he sort of took that with him. So there's a bookmark, a bookend of the giving of this to Riverwind by Goldmoon, and the receiving of it at the tail end of this book by Goldmoon. And we all know what is going to happen because, again, in War of Souls, they explain that Riverwind's, died, basically confronting Malystryx or something like that. But this is so much more than that, and it is so earned. And there's no point in time where you're bored. Like, I would say the first 2/3 of this book are interesting-ish. They're interesting adjacent because you know where it's going. You know the point of this is for Riverwind to die. That's the whole point of this book. But how he does it, and are the stakes worthy of his death? And so the whole story is building up to this, final third, which does not let you breathe. It just hits you action moment after action moment. And it is so earned. It is so great. I found myself laughing out loud. I found myself crying, like not actively like boobing, but it struck me emotionally. And I sort of had this relatable parent moment like Riverwind did, and I'll get into that in a second, which really brought me to my emotional core because then I started thinking of my daughter and my son, and it started really getting to me. So no one has agreed to go help Kender because who gives a fuck about Kender? Oh, sorry. Who cares about Kender? No one, right? They're always seen as pests more than anything else. Annoyances that steal your stuff. And so no one is willing to help him. Riverwind is telling Caramon, like, "Look, I'm sick. I'm not long for this world." He's grown this illness, and he's like, "I'm going to go help them." And his daughter's like, "Well, I want to go too. I'm going to go." And he's like, "No, it's best if I just do this alone." he knows that they're going to be going into this realm where this massive red dragon has completely decimated a lot of the area. He doesn't know exactly what he's walking into, but he's willing to do it knowing that this is probably going to be his last final act. Now, you can make an argument that if you know you're going to die, why wouldn't you just spend as many remaining moments as you have with your loved ones, right? Rather than going off on this fool's errand, basically, of confronting a dragon to save the kender. But I bought it in the moment, and I'm here for it as far as the story is concerned. So they're traveling there, and Malystryx sort of cuts to her storyline, and she wants to completely eliminate all of the kender. They're just little pests and annoyances. And it reveals little moments like when the Kronn-alin and Riverwind come across a scared kender, and how some of the kender are now starting to experience this concept of fear for the first time. And of course, these are in the games, they're called afflicted kender. But it's nice to see that progression of the kender race from fearless and just unstoppable in their desire and wanderlust to being terrified and unable to even function in the presence of things. And that's a really interesting species trait change, a sort of species arc, as it were, that I always thought was interesting about Fifth Age, but seeing it actively occurring in this novel is just one other reason that this really lives up to the series of Bridges of Time, where it's giving you that in-between of really great Fourth Age information and then Fifth Age information. So Malystryx reaches out to this ogre lord through an intermediary that she sort of created, like burning this woman and sort of infusing her with magic and stuff. And so she's basically using the ogres to be her army to move in and destroy all of the kender in the area. And that's the whole setup of this book, is the kender want help getting rid of the dragon and or ogres, and they don't know how close the ogres are to actually like decimating them. Riverwind finally gets close to Kendermore, and they see that the city of Kendermore is actually almost completely surrounded and overrun. So they have to go in these underground tunnels and get into the city. And there's a lot of kender on kender discussions. And what he does a really good job of, Chris Pierson, the author, is differentiating kender from each other. You don't feel like they're all clones of the same type that we've been introduced to in the past. You feel like each kender is different, and not just afflicted or not afflicted, but amongst each group, their personalities, their expressions, it just feels believable. And I've always liked kender. This book in particular, more even than the past sextet books, or prelude books. This one made me love kender. There's a sequence at the end that's cutting between Riverwind and his actions and the kender that are remaining in Kendermore, defending to sort of allow people to escape from the ogre invasion, and them leading them into traps and actively mocking them and making fun of them the whole time. And it's hilarious. The insults are great. Like, if you're ever going to play a kender, read this book, like the last third of this book, and you will get maybe 25, like 24 great insults for basically any monster, but in this particular case, it's specifically ogres. Just hilarious stuff. And then, of course, the ogres respond because they're being taunted, and the game mechanics that sort of drives you into a frenzy. And that's played through in the narrative. And I just thought it was so much fun because, yes, there are these incredible stakes at this moment, and you're cutting between some really emotional core moments, but it's nice to have that tension cut with dramatic adventure and a lot of humor. And what it ends up being is this really wonderful conclusion to a really enjoyable novel. So basically the plan comes out that, look, we're not going to be able to get away from this ogre army. They're going to come through and we will not be able to defend. And Malystryx's plan is to come and burn us down anyway. So we're screwed. We have to leave. And so they come up with this plan of using the underground tunnels, and for the next month before the ogres are ready to en masse come fight, they learn that the ogres are waiting to attack because Malystryx has an egg that's ready to hatch, and she doesn't want to leave the egg unguarded. And so they're like, all right, well, then if we have this time, let's start evacuating people, and we'll only keep what we absolutely have to in the city to sort of cover that escape. But we'll get as many people out. And simultaneously, Riverwind makes a decision that he's going to go and he's going to distract Malystryx, because when she does leave to go deal with this whole kender threat after the ogres are completely being decimated by them, she's going to go try to take care of it. He's going to move in and kill her egg, pulling her back from Kendermore so that she doesn't burn everyone alive. And instead, he is knowingly going in to sacrifice himself in order to kill this egg. And oh man, it's so good. Kronn goes with him. His daughter Brightdawn goes with him. And it is some of the most emotionally resonant. It reminded me of when Flint died and Tanis came running up and saw the Evermen and like just attacked him. Like that type of emotional rawness I felt here. There's this beautiful, beautiful moment. I'm going to try not to start crying just talking about it because it really got me. Where his daughter makes a sacrifice in order to save her father from this creature, this humanoid creature that Malystryx created to sort of guard her lair, and was sort of like a servant almost, like a seneschal or something. And Brightdawn runs across this bridge before she could cut it and they would all fall to their deaths. And she tackled this woman and they're rolling around. The woman jabbed her with a poison blade in her side and they both went over a sort of cliff ledge and she's hanging on. Her dad runs over, grabs her and pulls her up. Whew. This moment was so powerful. And she starts saying, do you remember when we were young and you would put us to bed? Oh, God, this is so powerful. And you would sing a song to us. He knows she's dying. There's no magic. There's no gods. He can't save his daughter. He's like, do you want me to sing to you? Well, oh, God. While she's actively dying, he sings that childhood lullaby to her. And sweet hell, it fucked me up. And I mean, it's hitting me hard right now, just reflecting back on it. Because again, I started thinking about my kids and stuff. And then he finally gets to a point where the kender are killing the ogres and luring them into traps, and they're dying by the thousands as well. So it's not one-sided by any means. But the ogres are losing this battle. And so Malystryx realizes this through this sort of magical communication she has with one of the leaders. And she goes off to burn them all down and to punish them. When she leaves, Riverwind goes up and he starts crushing this egg and just destroying it. And the way they described it, of this little fetus dragon form splashing down on the ground, and then Malystryx losing herself, and she just plummets thousands of feet from the air when she realizes her baby is being attacked, and she flies back, abandoning her desire to burn them all. And she gets to the top of the volcano. She's looking down at Riverwind, and Riverwind looks up and grabs this sword and just buries it through this little dragon fetus. You kind of feel bad for the dragon fetus because it's a little dragon baby, but it's a monster. It's Malystryx's baby. And he's doing this to save more kender lives. And he knows this is the end. She screams out in response, bursting his eardrums, shaking the entire mountain that she had magically erected thanks to the power of her dragon skull totem, and unleashes a blast of fire. Before the fire consumes him, he rips off the chain necklace of the Mishakal and he holds it up. And it's this beautiful moment where he says, I was wrong in my youth. Death does not fly on black wings. It's on red. And tying together the beginning of his story journey, collecting the staff of Mishakal for his love, Goldmoon, and the ending of his story, where he's using that same symbol of the same goddess, saying goodbye to the love of his life, who didn't know that he was already dying, which is why he was so willing to sacrifice himself in this, because he was going to die anyway. So he might as well do some good in the world before he ends it. And uses this symbol as the connection between the two of them. It was so goddamn powerful. Chris Pierson is just so goddamn good at what he does in writing. It hit me so, and just talking about it is hitting me again. Like, that's how good it is. If you have not read this book, do yourself a favor, man. Even if you never even liked Riverwind as a character, you will. And if you never liked Kender as characters, you will. There's a lot in this book to love. And then there is one point that I really didn't like, that really bugged me. At the very end, as a prologue, or an afterward, I mean, we have Goldmoon visiting the heroes, and she's like, I know that he's dead. And they're like, well, how could you know? She's like, well, you know, it's my love, my husband, I know. And there's this. And she shows the necklace. Like, how the hell did she get the necklace? There's no gods in the world right now. He had it. It would be melted onto the ground, and the lump of flesh and bone melt that, you know, Malystryx consumed him with, that fire. But it magically disappeared, and it magically reappeared on an altar of Mishakal. And that's where Goldmoon found it. And I call bullshit shenanigans. There's no reason that should have happened. Now, yes, magic items still did work in this era, for a little while anyway, you know, for at least like 50 years or something like that, 60 years. So maybe it was a magical item and it teleported itself back to the temple because that's what magic items might do. I don't know. It was never really explained, but it did very much seem like it was a divine intervention to send a message between two lovers, two people who connected at the very beginning of the entire Dragonlance saga. And then this is at the end of the fourth age, at the very beginning of the fifth age, is when they finally have their conclusion of a relationship. It was the only moment that I did not enjoy. And it was touching. It was a beautiful moment. And if it was in the fourth age, it would have been perfect. But there's no gods. And it didn't, at no point was she like, this is a magical pendant. And if she did, I missed it. Because it just felt odd, and it felt forced, and it felt off. Especially with everything else being so grounded in a realm without gods, you know? And it felt like a new world. It felt like the fifth age, which I really, really loved. All right, so in any case, Riverwind gave Kronn-alin a flute, and then Kronn-alin came back, and if I'm trying to go off memory here, I'm pretty sure like he played it or he gave it to Goldmoon or something. And then Caramon didn't realize that Goldmoon didn't know that Riverwind was dying, and he gave her the note and stuff. And there's just this really beautiful moment between her accepting his death and that he was going to die anyway. And that's why he went and did it, because no one else would help. And they needed help. And that's the type of person that Riverwind is. And I loved it so very much. I never really got that vibe from him any other time except for this book. And it was so beautiful, and it was so earned. Such a great novel. If you like Dragonlance, you have to read this novel. If you like Riverwind, or if you don't like him, you have to read this novel, because you will either love him or you will learn to like him. If you don't like Kender, if you love Kender, it's the same thing. It's going to be more of the same. You either love them more or you learn to like them. You learn to appreciate the terror of the Fifth Age and the Dragon Overlords. And Malystryx is an insurmountable force that they do not limit in her exposure. There's this really great moment where the ogres learn that it's Riverwind, the hero of the lance, that's defending Kendermore. And they're scared. And so they go and tell Malystryx, they're like, you need to know that there's a hero of the lance. And she's like, what the hell is that? They're like, you don't know it's Riverwind. He's a hero. He fought in the War of the Lands. She's like, what the hell is the War of the Lands? I'm not from here. That doesn't mean anything to me. If you can't handle the job I've given you, I'll replace you. And it's so funny because, yeah, she is an alien dragon. She came from another world. at this time that wasn't set out. It just said she came from across the sea. And so people don't really realize the scope of how alien she actually is. But at this time in the storytelling, she's still alien to Ansalon, which is where the War of the Lands happened. And so she has no idea who these people are. And so they're showing this reverence for this name. And she's just like, I don't care. Kill them. I just thought it was so great that we build up these ideas of these characters. But if you don't know, then they mean nothing to you. And you don't care. I thought it was so funny. And in any case, this is worth your time. 100%. It's not the best novel I've ever read in Dragonlance. It's not. But it is really good. And in the sea of mediocre and a fair amount of terrible novels, it is refreshing, especially in this time period of Dragonlance, to find a book that really hits. And this really hits. So I'll say it again. Do yourselves a favor and check it out. All right, Chris, thanks for tuning in. Corey, thanks for tuning in. Let's see. This book somehow made you love Kendermore. You'd never seen an interview with Chris Pierson. You'd love to hear him. I know I would too. If anyone has any connection with him, let him know. I love him as an author and I would love to talk with him. But I cannot find an email online for him. I've looked. So if we want to crowdsource this thing and try to get him to come on, I would love to gush over him about his writing and his different books because he is really good. I mean, really damn good. All right, you loved Riverwind, trusted only Caramon with the secret about his failing health. Very moving. Yeah, and they're old friends, you know. Could you imagine if Sturm never died, how close he, Goldmoon, and Riverwind would be? Because he was the one that initially brought them, to safety. He showed them that the civilized communities around the Plainsmen are not the monstrous people that they have always believed them to be, or, maybe not the most caring or something. And all of the bias that the civilized people have with the Knights of Solamnia and how Sturm is presenting as one, these Plainsmen never knew that, and their only understanding of it is through the honorable actions of Sturm. If Sturm was still around, it would have been even more devastating for him to share that moment, for Riverwind to share that moment of his oncoming death, failing health with him. It would have been so, just monumentous. And he couldn't have done it actually he could have done it to Tanis at this time, because Tanis is around still. Well, anyway, it was still good. All right, this novel made you contemplate, if you only had a few months to live, how would you use that time? What Riverwind chose to do with it is beautiful and moving. Yeah, helping those who desperately need it. That is very, very moving. I honestly, like I said before, I would, if I knew I was going to die, I'd be spending as much time with my family as possible. I'd be forsaking everyone else because, we choose who we want to love and be around in life. And if you only have a finite amount of time left, you want those that you've chosen to love to have as much shared time as possible, because that's what they're going to draw on when they reflect back on you when you're gone. And that's literally how you will live forever as a human being, through the memories and emotions of those that you've loved and shared time with. Malys is an awesome villain that you want to know more about. The totem aspect is very Highlander and cool. I've always liked the totem stuff. I have a video on dragon totems, dragon skull totems. If you haven't seen it yet, definitely go check it out. Malys, I've always seen her as this sort of, just like this emotionless bad guy. Just a BBEG end boss that doesn't really have anything to any personality or anything like that. This book actually gave her personality. At least I thought. And it was enough that it made me not only see her as this looming, insurmountable threat, but also as cunning and witty and intentional, Like she's not just stumbling around saying, I need a new lair. She's actually considering the world that she is taking over and who she wants to engage with and how she wants to use them. And it's interesting. I just never had that from her before that I remember anyway. You loved how the Kender defended their town? Yeah, dude. I think that would be a great short. If we just had like a 10-minute animation of that, that would be so much fun. Or a live action replay of it or something. I kept wishing for Knights of Salamnia to show up, but so realistic they didn't. I'm glad they didn't. You know, it's sort of like with Star Wars, and you always have Jedi in there. I love Knights of Salamnia. But this is an era where they're completely sort of consumed by dealing with Knights of Takhisis. And they don't have the power or the authority that they once had in order to like send legions down to defend. You know, they're dealing with Ski up in, you know, Kelendros up in Palanthas area right now. So to me, it made perfect sense that they would not be there. You didn't need them. And they really, really, I thought, sold it with just the Kender and the Plainsmen. I thought it was just so damn good. All right, so as hard as that moment was with the daughter, you were moved to tears even more than the note to Goldmoon, yeah. It had a few words which summed up the Quiet Plainsman perfectly. Yeah, it's just so good. You love the alien dragon, didn't know about Riverwind, the hero of the Lance too. Take that, biatch. Sturm or Tanis would have been standing next to Riverwind and Kendermore if they were alive. 100%. Well, no, because Tanis was alive. Sturm wasn't. Tanis had died in the chaos. Oh, yeah, duh. Oh, my gosh. I keep getting like these tiny minutia timelines. I'm getting them mixed up. You're 100% right. Tanis was dead, and he definitely would have been there if he was alive. You are 100% right. Thank you for that. Dying to fanboy out of this book. Yeah, no, this is so good. And look, this is the first in the Bridges of Time series. If this is like the trajectory we're going in, fingers crossed, it's going to be a great series. I'm really, really looking forward to the next one. And the next book I am reading is the second in this. I'm not sure what it is in this very second, but... and I believe each of these are little standalone stories unto themselves, very much like the Chaos War series I just finished. So, you know, hopefully we don't get a Mount Nevermind version of crap novels like we did with the Chaos War series. But this is a great opening. Just absolutely adore it. All right, so that's going to do it for my review of Spirit of the Wind by Chris Pierson. What did you think of the Farewell to Riverwind? Did you like the holy symbol mystery at the end? And finally, are Kender the most vicious warriors on Krynn? Feel free to email me at infodeals.com or leave a comment below. I'd like to take a moment to remind you to subscribe to the YouTube channel, ring the bell to get notified of upcoming videos, and click the like button. Boop. It all goes to help other DragonLance fans learn about this channel and its content. Just a real quick note. I have a new project I've been developing, a dark fantasy campaign setting called Dairlands. We just finished the third of 3 sessions, actual plays of the first adventure called Stop the Spread. It reveals tons of lore. It reveals tons of information about the world. And the characters are hilarious and emotional. And it was a great actual play series, in my opinion. So I'm very proud of it. Check it out when you have a moment. This channel is all about celebrating the wonderful world of the DragonLance Saga. Thank you for joining in that celebration. This has been Adam with DragonLance Saga, and until next time, Slán Javar.